Yo, 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 what's up, y'all? It's your boy, Big Mike. Welcome in to Swish for Real. I got my buddy, Boogie Bob, in the house. Boogie, how you living, man?
Swish for real.
Swish for Real,
Oh, we're
baby.
having a great week. We got some nice rain. Grass is starting to turn green, which means get to mow it in the next week or two and start trimming some trees and hauling some leaves out. So, and then come in and take my allergy medicine.
Well, I know
So,
you know where I live at. I got tons of trees, so I love the summertime with the trees, but the winter I hate it because it's like a snow of leaves everywhere. So it takes
yes.
forever to get those leaves up.
And as soon as you rake them up the next day with a gust of wind, you got a whole new yard full of leaves again.
Thanks. And guys, one of my good friends from back in the day, man, he was once with E Play. Now he's doing his own thing. Dan Dickey, man, how you living, buddy?
I'm doing great. Just hanging out with the family and raising my boys, and you know.
That's good, man. I'm glad that you hopped on, man. We got a lot to talk about today, man. We have some very good subjects that we put together for this episode 61, for those who want to know. And our first topic, man, it's a player that he played for Dallas for a while, man. And he was pretty good at the time. He was a great center, and he just recently passed away. And I'm not quite sure how much, if you even had a chance, Dan, to even meet this guy in person, but Oliver Miller, recently passed away. I want to talk about his career in retrospect, and what he achieved as an NBA player, and what was his career like in your estimation.
What was his career like? It was better than I think most people realize. I think a lot of people nowadays don't really know who Oliver Miller is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he was a guy that was supremely talented, but was going to have an issue his whole life, which was the fact that he had a lot of weight, and he was never really going to figure out how to not be a heavy guy. And
Yeah.
so he was just going to have to be exceptional basketball player around that fact, pretty much is how it played out. And I don't think a lot of people, even some basketball fans don't realize how good he actually was for the 8 seasons or so that he played in the NBA. Yeah, he was a star at Arkansas for 4 years. Who was with him? Was a Day and Mayberry, I think, were his guards, and they made a Final Four, and I think they made an elite. I want to say also made an Elite Eight, and he just a talented guy. He just so big. I just he was the guy that everyone said, man, if he could figure out how to curb that weight gain and to turn it around, and like Charles Barkley generally had done, because Charles had lost a bit of weight when he got to the NBA. He stayed big, but he was not nearly as big as he was, as a junior in college. But yeah, he never quite got that figured out.
And what surprised me was that he was born in Fort Worth, Texas. I didn't know he was a Texan.
Yeah. I didn't even know that. And I actually don't remember him in Dallas that much, because it was only 1 year.
Yeah, I would love when he played for Dallas, because one thing kind of gravitated me to think about him was not that he passed, but he had some of the best footwork for a big man, and he could maneuver around the basket like none of your business. You know what I mean? And if you had to compare him to somebody, who would you compare him to?
You're talking to me, right?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of who has has really good footwork and really pass. Uh-oh.
We have a saying here: leave some food on the plate for the rest of us to eat.
Yeah, because I hadn't really thought about because he to me
I
was
have a couple
so
comparisons,
unique.
but I'm curious to hear what you got to say.
I mean, like, see, I don't even think they're that close, but like, I think of a little bit like a Zach Randolph, or somebody that's really good feet and has different ways they can do, and soft hands, but they weren't that similar a player. They were actually quite a bit different. in other ways. So
Zach was a bruiser.
Huh?
Zach was a bruiser. He would bruise you up and
Right.
didn't care.
Right. And Oliver wasn't quite
Carlos
as hardcore.
Boozer on the Cleveland Cavaliers was kind of that kind of player.
Who was that again?
Boozer.
Carlos Boozer.
Carlos Boozer. Now Carlos Boozer was more scoring oriented. Oliver Miller was a lot more willing to get in the post, get good footwork, try to get in good position. But if he didn't feel it was good position, he was a really good passer out of that post. Better than Boozer was, better than Randolph was, better than most. I looked up his Dallas season because I figured that was probably one of the reasons we're talking about him.
Yeah.
And Dallas that year, when his on-off splits were incredible. He was like a +9 on, and they were 9 points better when he was on the court when he was off. And it appeared to be specifically because shooting percentages went up offensively. The assist percentage for the lineup went up quite a bit, and their team defense was better by a couple points per 100 possessions. So he made a really good impact when he played at Dallas, but it was only 800 minutes, I think.
Yeah,
but if you remember, Nelly liked those kind of players. He called it the point forward.
Yes.
He had Antoine Walker and Antoine Jameson were kind of in that same mold, that point forward. And that
do you
that
ever
one year
coach
he
with
was
Boris
here.
Diaw? Because I always thought of like a Boris Diaw as being the kind of guy that Nelly would love. I can't remember if you ever coached him though, but Boris Diaw is a little bit of a comparison, but not as much as center. It's more of a power forward, small forward, not specifically low post guy, but really good passer, ready passer.
Yeah, he played all the way into 2004 as far as Oliver Miller did. And he probably averaged about, I'm thinking, 6 points a game. His best season was with Toronto, which he played 76 games with Toronto, which he averaged about 12.9 points that game, that season rather. So he's not a bad player in essence, but there's much more he could have given us though.
Well, I can give you some stats about Oliver Miller because I looked it up. Because I remember him being, I knew he was a really good passer. I knew he was a really good shot blocker, even though you wouldn't think he would be because he was so heavy. His reach was incredible. I don't know what his reach was, but I'd be willing to bet it was over 7 foot, even though he was only about 6'9", or probably well over 7 foot, probably like 7'3", 7'4". And he had really good timing with block shots. He didn't have to load. He just was a quick. He would be able to be upright and not jump super high, but his reach was so good, his timing was so good. He blocked shots. He had really good hands. He get a lot of steals. So when I looked up, I thought he had to be one of the better guys at his time in those stats. And I looked up, he had played about 10,000 minutes, a little over 10,000 minutes for those 8 years that he mainly played, and he had 3 years he didn't play at all. And he was in the top 10 amongst power forwards and centers in blocks per possession, and steals per possession. He was a top 7 in assists. He was exceptional at the things he was good at. And he would have been a star level player if he just didn't have such weight issues and probably eating disorder or whatever he was dealing with, because he was just, there's an exceptional player in that big body,
I agree. And when he came to the Mavs, that's when I really took notice. When he was in Phoenix, he was really, really good. But when he came to the Mavs, I just had to just keep watching him because he was something that we needed at the time. Because the Mavericks always, and I talked about this in one of our stories, we always had issues with keeping big men. You know what I mean? We'll get one, but like a Sean Bradley or Cherokee Park or, somebody that wasn't really, a superstar in essence. But that's neither here nor there for as the Mavs go. Bob, what are your thoughts on Oliver Miller's career? And same thing, the same question. Who do you compare him to when you had to really compare his abilities and some of the things that he did on the floor?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because that's actually the first comment. And you know how I always have the career stats, but it wasn't that long ago that we lost Roy Tarpley. And you did a nice story on Roy Tarpley. He was what, 50, 51?
He was pretty
Yeah.
young.
Yeah. So I mean, Oliver Miller at 54. Uh, I'm just going to get the big elephant out of the room. You know, a lot of people said they didn't care if Luka was 300 pounds; he'd still be the best player on the court offensively. Well, he's not much shorter than Oliver Miller. Uh, so Dan is right. He's 6'9" and 280. That is what he is listed at. He had a
Yeah,
wingspan over 7'1".
he was 350 probably in his prime.
Yeah,
That's how big he was.
when he was with the Mavs,
I'm
he was
330
over 3.
pounds. I know.
He would, as Lalo probably talked to, he would have been a great maniac. But you know, uh, he was awesome at Arkansas. I don't know if Nolan Richardson was still the coach there, but he could run the floor. So here's my comparisons. He was kind of an early version of Zion Williams, as far as being
I have to
big.
close my eyes and think about that one. I don't know.
Well, and here's why I make that comparison, because Oliver Miller had quickness. You know, he wasn't going. You know, if you played like Nelly, like to play fast pace when most teams weren't playing fast pace. But I mean, he could get up and down the court. But if it was in half court, he had, like Dan was saying, he had great hands. He could catch the ball. He didn't fumble it. He was very quick for his size, and he would jump before others. He wasn't a Kenny Skywalker fly in the air type of leaper, but he could get block shots. But to me, he was kind of an earlier version of Zion Williams. Maybe not quite as athletic as Zion, but he was a big man with quickness. Here's the other comparison. He's a poor man's Draymond Green.
I can see that.
Draymond probably a better passer, but similar role, similar size. That Draymond much more. He's not a doughboy, like a Pillsbury doughboy. He's more like the muscular guy. But their games were pretty similar. So he's a, when people comparison, they always call Jalen Rose a poor man's Magic Johnson. So to me, Oliver Miller was a poor man's Draymond Green. But he was exciting to watch. He was really exciting player. His career stats were this: 7.4 points per game, 5.9 rebounds per game, 2.2 assists per game. He only played 9 years, and 4 of those were with Phoenix, 1 with Dallas. He was with Brooklyn. Here's the interesting thing when you look up the history. 2 players and a draft pick they got for Felton Spencer. And for those that don't know, way back, Felton Spencer was considered kind of an above average center.
Oh, okay. I had to think about it.
Phoenix traded Felton Spencer for 2 players that nobody would recognize the name and the draft pick. And the draft pick turned out to be Oliver Miller. So,
and by the way, Oliver Miller was straight out the chute quite good. Like, he was very impactful for the Suns at a really young age. The weight just got worse.
So in the time period he had, their equipment managers were around. You had physical trainers like Casey Smith, who's no longer with the Mavs, but you didn't have that many physical trainers. You didn't have people that spend money on their body like LeBron does now. In the last 20 years, a lot of nutritionists, and if you got hurt, you took the needle and you went and played. You didn't sit out for 4 or 5 games. So, who knows what Oliver Miller would be able to do now? But he had a body type that just it was not built for being lean. He was a big old boy, and the one thing I remember when he was in Dallas is the kid was always smiling.
Yeah, he had a very
attitude. With joy, even though his numbers are not off the chart, he was always smiling. It's like those players are fun to watch, even if they're your your second man or third man rotation player. I'll turn it over to Wild Dog.
Wild Dog. What's up with you, man? Thanks
Arr,
for hopping on. Dan, that's Wild Dog, our other co-host. As he's one of our good guys. He actually was a Mavs maniac back in the day, so you might want to check him out when you get an opportunity. Wild Dog, your thoughts on Oliver Miller, man? What were your thoughts when you heard the passing of him? Because I know you probably met him in general.
Yeah, I mean, he's a local talent, so you know me, I'm big about North Texas and trying to know who our local talent is, current and past, and it was just like, dang, dog. It's like, you know, like I'm still literally, technically, I'm still fighting for my life every day, focused on wellness, and I just knew it was untimely. It was like, you know, like a half life, and I was just like, man, not again, you know. And again, I heard the key phrase, fun to watch. Oliver Miller, regardless of the image, you know, talking about the NBA, professional athletes, regardless of the so-called, you know, athletic image, he was fun to watch, you know. And being a big man myself, you know, Wild Dog, you a football player. You ain't no basketball player. Cats like Oliver Miller took the stress off of us. You know what I mean? You know? And so, you know, when guys would be calling out this or playing horse, you'd be on the blacktop and it's like, oh, I'm Big O, I'm Oliver Miller. And people be like, oh, you know, it's always a check sum. It's like, oh, okay, well, you know what I'm saying? You know? And you know, and then sometimes it would bust it because, you know, you sit over there, you get picked last, or it would be a play. Somebody might be betting on the game and they'd be like, choose the fat boy last. And I would be like the ringer, you know what I mean? you know, because, you know, I had hoops back in the day. I could do some things. And just, again, it was just culturally, you know, Oliver Miller, you know, Charles Barkley. And then for a comparison, it was like, he was fun to watch for me. And he was like, you know, kind of cleared the air like someone like Daryl Dawkins, you know, where the physical presence and the power in the game, you know, he kept it alive. We had so much finesse and people were just looking to score, you know, he brought straight up, you know what I'm saying, a big smile on his face, but bring the thunder down on you at the same time.
Yeah.
I'll be like, take this home with you, wrap it up, take this home with you. So Oliver Miller kind of, for me, kept that alive. I'm not trying to compare them physically. You know, Daryl Dawkins was like 6'11", 250 or so, but, you know, maybe later in his career or whatever. But, you know, but the physical presence, bringing that physical athleticism to the game, to the culture, I greatly appreciate it. And going to miss Big O, you know, Fort Worth product, straight up.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing about how I really like players that are fun to watch when you don't need them to score. And he was fun to watch at every aspect of the game. He moved well for his size. He was quick defensively. He got steals and blocks, and he passed well. Statistically, from the same era, pretty much, he was most similar to Bo Outlaw. Even though Bo Outlaw and him are probably as opposite as you can be in terms of body build. They both, you know, high steals, high assists, didn't shoot a ton because they didn't need to score to help their team. And I think that Draymond Green comparison, now Draymond's more of a face-up. He's not a guy that tends to post up defensively, and he's not a straight center power forward. I think if a guy with the talent of Oliver Miller came out nowadays, you would see coaches trying to really, at a younger age, help get that weight under control and turn him into somebody that would be more of a Zion or a Draymond Green if he didn't shoot as much, you know, and try to help your team and not necessarily be straight power forward center. But I don't, you know, but it's just because it's a different time now. Talented players, they always teach them more face up.
I think they would probably turn him into a stretch four more so nowadays. They may try to make him shoot more threes.
Yeah, and just help his diversity, you know, away from the basket a little bit. That's what they would do now. Back then, they were like, big guy, throw him in the middle, and, you know, because that's what you do with big guys.
Yeah, so, back then for sure. And speaking of assists, though, there's a lot of great point guards nowadays. It's just like it's an influx of great guards now. Because I remember back in the 90s, it was a guard heavy era, you know what I mean? And then when the 2000 came, then it came the power forward era. And now I think we're going back to the guard era. And we're going to start with you, Wild Dog. Give me your top 5 current point guards in the NBA today. If you had to just name them, if you want to name them by your top one, or you just want to just randomly say which 5 is your best, or you share your thoughts on them.
Point guards.
Point guards, yeah. And I don't know if you can call Luka a point guard. They do call him that, but
yeah, that's the thing, because we've had discussion before. I'm just me. I'm like, where is a true point guard anymore? We had to redefine what a point guard is. So, I mean, as far as true point guards, I'm like, I mean, there's a
how
few
many of those do we
there.
have in the league nowadays? It's a true point guard.
I mean,
not many.
Not many, right?
Yeah, combos and right.
I think the only true point guard you have now would be Chris Paul, and he's kind of, I wouldn't say he's a shell of himself, but he's not Chris Paul of 2015.
Right. Like Trey Young, but he scores so much, so maybe not.
Yeah. So still kind of a combo there, because we talked before. You kind of do what you're asked to do. You say, well, why did this player do this? Why didn't they have that stats? It's like, well, look back to, the style of ball being played, and then look at what the player was asked to do. Did the player do what they were asked to do? You can't hold that against them. You know what I'm saying? So my first cuff, is like, I talked a lot about him last year, even the year before last, leading up to their championship, is Derek White. I felt like, he was the key in the Celtics making the turn. Yeah. So as far as a true point guard that I could speak for myself, I would go with the Derek White.
And he's a San Antonio product, right? Product of Popovich.
Yeah. That is Chris, yeah.
And he's maybe a combo also, right? I mean, his assist rates aren't even as high as Tatum's.
Yeah.
Even though, so it's hard. It's so hard today's good
players
to pigeonhole them specifically sometimes.
But he scores in dead times, and then the style of play with their ISO play with Tatum, and how's he going to score those assists?
And I hated that 5-out they did against us in the finals. That 5-out killed us, man.
Yeah, he gets them in position or moved into position to where they can be successful. But, even off a score, that assist click is not necessarily going to come because of the ISO with, Tatum, even Jaylen Brown, like down on the block. You're not necessarily going to get that click of assist,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that'd be your number 1 or number 2, Derek White?
I mean,
you didn't even talk about his defense. He's a really good defensive player.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and then, my goodness, ooh.
So you got Derek White as your starting point.
You mentioned Chris Paul, of course, but I mean, then it's not fair to compare guys to Chris Paul. But as far as true point guards, I mean, and then honestly, I love the positionless basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just said point, then I'd be going to folks like Draymond Green, we've talked about. I'd be going to, the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be going to other players who, I would even, throw Luka in there, with their great
But
vision.
see, like with Joker, he doesn't have the ball coming up the floor for the most time. If you think of a traditional point guard, they bring the ball up the floor.
Right, so, but that's because that's what coaches are asking, expecting them to do. Right, but as far as point, if you bring the ball up the court and then you dump it off, at the top of the key to the Joker or Draymond Green, then who's the distributor? Who's really, helping that throughput to get the ball in the hands to the basket?
I get your point of view.
You got the responsibility of safely bringing the ball up the court, but once half court ends, you dump it off to another point, who's then distributing and running the offense.
Gotcha. So who would you have as you got Derek White? Then who's your other 4?
Man,
you got caught off guard.
I mean, I mean, but then it's blended. If we're gonna, because it's really combo. But I like Fox. I like,
Aaron Fox. Yeah, I love his
Mhm.
game. Now,
but
and you think of a good guard, he's one of them too, especially for
you
this
know,
day and age. Quick, fast, and he can run the floor like lightning.
yeah. But honestly, I'm sorry. I just don't even look at it.
That's
That's
okay. You'll
okay.
hear some names and go, "Oh, yeah."
The culture right now is
Him
is
too.
really positionless, and the
Yeah.
sad thing is that even if you have a true point guard, where is there a place for them?
Right.
You know, so like
Got
me, I would even be considered a point forward. They're like, oh, you can't play point guard. Well, both our point guards are down.
it.
Coach, I got this. You know what I'm saying? You
Kind of
know,
like what they're doing with
I'd be
Dinwiddie
like,
for
and they
for
were
the
like
Mavs.
asking me what I was doing after the game, and we won the tournament. We won the tournament. I'm like, consider me a point forward, whatever you got to call me. But I played the 1, I played the 2, I played the 3, I played the 4, I played the 5. Whatever
Right on.
we got down to injury, whatever coach needs me to do. But that's how I came up. Is like you got to be able to do everything. You know.
There's a lot of ways to initiate an offense.
And in the
Yeah.
NBA, we got guys who had growth spurts, but a lot of them, including Shaquille O'Neal, came up as point guards, right?
Yeah, because he was the tallest kid on his. What was it like? He was playing AAU basketball in San Antonio, and he kind of told the story where he had to bring the ball up.
Yeah, and then you have
David Robinson was a point guard, I think, in high school.
He probably
Anthony
was.
Davis. And then
Middle
they had big
school,
growth
yeah.
spurts when they had college.
Yeah,
Yeah.
JV, and then they hit that growth spurt, and then even like Magic was like fortunate where it's like he was in situations where it's like, yeah, he was asked to play big, but because of his skill set, he never lost that. He never was moved the transition out of being a point. You know?
And by the way, you bring up Magic. How is Luka that much different than Magic in terms of Magic didn't always bring the ball up court, but he did usually, but not always. I think maybe a lot of it is fast break. Magic was so good at the fast break that you really think of him as point guard. But I mean, he had Norm Nixon as a combo guard, who was a high-ish assist guard, and Byron Scott later, and
Michael
kind of like
Cooper.
the Kyrie Irving now, right? But as far as I'm kind of concerned, Luka's pretty much a point guard. He has the ball in his hands so much to initiate offense at the top of the key. It's kind of hard to.
Yeah, really, I consider Luka a point forward. He's too big. I mean,
right. But so was Magic, but they didn't call him.
Yeah, you can consider Magic a point center because
yeah, he did play center.
Yeah, he won a championship.
Even in my memoir, I have a page about Magic Johnson, and don't ever forget that he won Finals MVP his rookie year as center, filling in for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's basketball. That's what I'm saying. You baller. You come up small playing with older kids if you're that good, and then you have to transition. So, I don't like it when those ball handling skills get lost, right? Yeah. What are you doing? It's like, yeah, you're asked to do this, but you played half your life carrying the ball up because you're a baller playing with older kids because you're that good, right? And then at some point you have a growth spurt where you may have to transition to other responsibilities, but, still have those handles. And I think that's why Shaq was so good with, not that he never had mistakes, but, he was solid. You get the ball anywhere, his catch radius was huge, right? Because of the way he came up with those ball handling skills, So I don't mean to push back on you, bro, with your question, but I'm just like, really it would be Joker. No,
right. Again, if you have to choose your 5 top point guards for the current NBA's, what would be your 5? Because I have an idea of who I like, but I'm just giving this conversation over to you guys so you can kind of give me your thoughts on your top 5 in the current NBA.
You asking me or Dan?
Dan.
So if I were going to be more conventional about it and say this year and not count Joker because he's 7 foot, right? Just kind of let's have it guys that maybe bring it up more. Shea would be my number 1 guy, even though he's not specifically a true point guard per se.
Yeah.
He's a point guard, pretty much, and he just has a lot of diverse talent.
And
and a
speaking
lot
of
of scoring
Shea,
talent.
and speaking of Shea, do you think he would have been better suited with the Clippers, or you think Oklahoma got the better deal?
Oh, dude, Oklahoma City's so good, and he's perfect. He's perfect in that spot right now, and they had injury problems all year,
Yeah.
and they still dominated. And they're young as younger than almost all the teams, most of the teams, and they still dominate. And a lot of it's on him. He's so good.
Right.
I mean, he
And
just
not
took
to get
another
off
level this year.
not to get off the subject though, why is it that they can't be playing very to their potential when it comes to Dallas? What's the difference?
They weren't as good last year as they are this year, and they were younger last year than they are this year. And
But
Dallas had
how many
Luka,
games
who was
they
better
beat
than
that?
anybody they had.
We're what?
Like if we played
2
again
games?
this year, I wouldn't want to play Oklahoma City this year if they're healthy.
Yeah.
I mean that's because you know how championships teams are. I grew up a Pistons fan, right?
Sorry to hear that.
And I had to, and so Isaiah Thomas came on, and they got Bill Laimbeer, and they started getting these people together. We didn't go win championships right away. We're losing. We get to the championship finally, lose the Lakers. They had to get closer to their prime, and they had to gel. And then Oklahoma City this year is one of the best regular seasons of all time in terms of point differentials and things like that, which modern day basketball, it's hard to fathom that you could put together a team that could be that consistent. Like I said, with one of their top players missed almost a fourth of the season. Did I just forget his name? I just forgot his name. Tall, skinny kid. Really good. Power forward. I just forgot his name.
Is it Chet Holmgren?
Jalen Williams.
Huh?
Jalen Williams.
Okay, no, he's good. He's good. I'm talking about the power forward, blocks all the shots.
Lou Dort.
No?
Chet Holmgren.
Huh?
Isn't that Chet Holmgren?
Yeah. He is a stud, and he missed most of the season. And I'd have Shea. I'd put Luka number 2, as long as he's not sitting on the bench hurt or something. Let me think. I know. Donovan Mitchell. Cleveland is so good, and the big reason why they're good is Mitchell and Mobley, and they are really good. And I think people kind of forget teams don't become elite with just a bunch of decent players. They become elite with players they're generally elite. And Cleveland doesn't specifically have a guy who go, that guy's an elite player. They're close. They got a couple of guys that are close, and I don't know who's more impactful because Mobley's so important on the interior defense, but Donovan Mitchell. I would say Steph Curry still, but he's
he score first though for the most part.
Yeah, he score first.
Yeah.
But he's
How do you think Clay got all those open shots though? Clay had the league in the least amount of dribbles because of Stephen Curry. He didn't have to get himself open.
Now I think it was more how they ran that offense though. It was more than the offense than it was Curry though. Because that offense is free flowing.
I got one more. How about Halliburton?
I was about to ask you about Halliburton, and there's one other player that people don't talk about a lot is Lonzo Ball, and his brother LaMelo.
Lonzo's he's not really a high usage guy, and he's more of a point forward in my mind. But LaMelo, am I getting I'm not mixing them off, am I?
LaMelo's closer to a
piece. He's in Charlotte. LaMelo.
Yeah. Now LaMelo though, this Charlotte's not that great. He's having to do a lot. He's going to be even better when he's surrounded by better talent and he's able to rein his game in a little bit to where he becomes more efficient. His turnovers drop, teams start winning more. But I wouldn't have him there yet because it was kind of like, it's when the teams aren't as successful, it's harder to have them in that upper echelon, especially when they're really young.
And then Dan, again, it's like LaMelo was brought up to be a traditional point guard.
Yeah.
But then what is a man asked to do? Right. Yeah. So then he looks more like a shooting guard,
who can pass really good.
So he was brought up traditionally as a point guard and then gets there and it's like, oh, we need you to do this. And this is like, oh, well, okay, I can, And
He
so,
was like a little bit like slow-mo, because he was tall coming out of college, and then he started, and so he's not. I say slow-mo. You guys know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. I know you're talking about.
I'm horrible with names. Like they leave my brain all the time. Because he's like 6'6", 6'7", and he was never a fast point, right? He was just smart and good body positioning. I'm an Arizona alum, so I watched every time UCLA played Arizona. I mean, I obviously watched all those games, and I watch other UCLA games. And so, and he, by the way, I think he would have been a much better NBA player than we realized if he didn't have the injury issues. I think he would have been a guy that could have been like a Draymond Green impact type player.
Mhm.
He just never really got to be that.
And
in my opinion.
Lonzo, yeah.
Speaking of injuries, though, there's two guards that are notable to me. Kyrie Irving is a great point guard. I'm sorry, Bob. I'll leave a little
Hey,
for
you
you.
let Bob.
I knew to leave that one
Before
alone.
we get to Bob.
Even I knew to leave that one alone.
See,
Right.
I'm skinny for a reason. I'm skinny for a reason because all the big guys need all that food off the table before I can get to it.
And there's one more too that I wanted to kind of mention too. And I'm not a fan of his, but I like his game. Russell Westbrook.
He's fun to watch just
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's so high energy, but he's not the player anywhere near the player he used to be.
Yeah.
Facts.
And again, the age of combo
him
point
in
guard.
Denver has been an amazing feat for him. He's really helping him out.
Have you seen how good he is when he's on the court with Joker? Like how good his
Yeah.
stats are? And then when he's not on the court with Joker, his stats aren't very good. So
Yeah,
Joker puts him in those positions where he's able to really excel.
Yeah.
I thought he was done. And then this year
Yeah.
he got better. He was better than he was last year. So
Thanks. And I think when he went to the Lakers, it kind of made him a shell of himself. He wasn't very. I don't think he got the notoriety he should have gotten with the Lakers or get the playtime he needed, but because LeBron dominated the ball, so it wasn't a fit for him.
Yeah. But again,
Bob, your thoughts?
better suited as a shooting guard who was asked to, have more point responsibility. So can't knock the man for being who he really is, who he truly is. So
Yeah, he's a triple-double threat for sure. Bob, give me your top 5 as far as the current NBA point guards.
So
Now, hopefully, I'll let some on the table for you.
I'm glad you added this to the run sheet when I sent it a few weeks ago. I actually have a top 4, and then I have a tie at 5, and then some older player guard, not old style guards. But I agree with Dan. I got SGA at number 1. I got Stephen Curry at number 2. I got Jalen Brunson at number 3. And a counterpoint to Dan in Cleveland, Darius Garland has taken another step. I mean, Donovan Mitchell is you need a bucket, Donovan Mitchell will get you a bucket. He's like Bradley Beal or Gilbert Arenas type player. But Darius Garland is the motor that makes that car run. And I don't know how much you watch Cleveland, but Darius Garland is, they traded Colin Sexton. So Darius Garland is kind of what Wild Dog was talking about with Derek White. He does a lot. He don't woo you with stats. I have him at number 4. And then I have a 4-way tie at number 5 in this order. Ja Morant, Cade Cunningham.
Oh, I was about to ask you about Cade Cunningham. Like, why has nobody talked about him?
Well, I think we'll talk a lot more about these guys maybe next year when they have another year. Yeah.
Jamal Murray.
Yep.
And I have Luka at the bottom of those 4. Now, Luka, it's funny when they're on your team, you see them differently. When you see them on a different team and they play the same game, you kind of see not necessarily the flaws, but you kind of see, and it's not necessarily the weaknesses, but you have kind of a different aspect when they're in a different system and they're not their team. And Luka is still step back 3 and accelerate, decelerate, and get those. But as far as and if you give James Harden credit and LeBron credit and put somebody halfway in between, then that's Luka. And last year we saw him play on the ball defense for the first time. He's still not playing it. He kind of sags and guards whoever the small forward is. That's why he gets a lot of rebounds. He has it's not like Russell Westbrook running in. But
Russell Westbrook used to do that a lot too to get his rebounds. He wouldn't actually.
Yeah, but he
sag a
came
lot.
flying. He's guy through the air. He come in from the top of the key. But
But he would get a lot of open steals.
if you look at the, I mean, there was an initial bump for the Lakers, but they have not been as good the last 10 games with Luka. So it's like now that he's not with the Mavericks, you kind of look at him different. So I kind of have him. I think John Morant probably a little bit. Cade Cunningham, they used to compare him to Luka. I think he's a little smoother. And Jamal Murray, Joker needs somebody to get him the ball to start and initiate the offense. And yeah, he's very good at the passing and the shooting, but it's Jamal Murray. And as far as older players that are top point guards, they're more the traditional handle the ball type of point guard. I had Kyrie at the top of that list, as you mentioned, Dan. I mean, he was having the best season of his career before he tore his ACL. One player that hadn't been mentioned, Damian Lillard. He's one of those scoring point guards. And this next guy won an MVP. At one point this season, he was leading the league in assists, but James Harden's had a resurgence, just like Westbrook's had a resurgence. Harden in the Clippers this year, he's not Houston James Harden, but he's definitely not Brooklyn or Philadelphia 76ers Harden. So as far as the older player guards, I had Kyrie, Dame, and Harden in there, but I mean, I put Brunson and Darius Garland in there because when you look at those teams, when those players are off the court, they struggle a little more. And Dan was talking about the stats when Olin Miller was on the court versus not. And, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Mitchell, they got to have somebody throwing the ball. And I don't think he gets talked about as much because he's not one of those stat fillers. And that gets me back to the point of Luka. Luka's a highlight reel player. We all love to watch him because he's going to throw that 90-foot pass, to a running guy on the dime, not have to break stride, go up for a dunk. He makes highlight reel. He's a showman. And it makes it fun to watch, and that's why we're all fans of Luka. But they're in the same breath as I noticed he wasn't that consistent with his 3-point shot when he was here. He's only like career average of 38%. And I think there's a player that hit 20,000 points the other day, and Luka scored 10,000 before he even finished his 5th year. So I mean, he's setting pace-wise. He was setting the records that LeBron was setting, but he's a highlight reel. He's look at me, and that's why I kind of downgraded him. It was like
he was in the championship last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Mavericks roster was.
He had a bloody knee, a sore hip, a blackened calf, and who knows what else was bad. And he still drugged the team to the finals. But I think Brunson has a little bit of Luka's game and that accelerate, decelerate. But people forget Brunson won 2 championships at Villanova, and he was National College Player of the Year. And his dad played in the NBA, so he's got that point guard pedigree. He just can score hoops. So that's my kind of top 12. But the first 4, I didn't have LaMelo in there. If he was on the Mavericks, I might bump him up. But when you say Charlotte Hornets, I can't include any like PJ. I can include PJ Washington now. But you say Charlotte Hornets, I'm like, okay. You lose all credibility now. It's like, okay, they're on the Charlotte Hornets. It's like, it's easy to be a great player on a really bad team.
Now, forgive me if you didn't mention him, though, but I haven't heard his name yet. John Morant. Do you consider him a point guard, or what position do you?
Somebody said John Morant.
he's like Dennis Smith or young Russell Westbrook, even a Darren Fox. When he wants to get to the hole, you can't stop him. And the reason
he's a true point guard, just scores. Yeah,
he's a little better 3-point shooter than Westbrook, and he's quick like Fox. But if you watch John Morant play defense, he reminds you a little bit of Russell Westbrook. That he's got hops, and I mean, guy went up to dunk it. He came from about the elbow and blocked it clean. Didn't even touch him with his body. And I'm like, not his head, his shoulders were even with the rim. His shoulders. I'm like, if you remember slam dunk contest many years ago, Dwight Howard hadn't raised it to 11 feet and dunked it. Like that's the kind of hops John Morant and even Westbrook back in the day had. So
the thing that's funny is 2 years ago, Morant was the one everybody kind of figured would be number 1, 2, 3 in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
But SGA is the one that ended up kind of building himself to get there. Morant had some
John
setbacks,
Morant
partly his own fault.
Because of these.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was be packing at the wrong time.
The wrong kind of
bigger guns will get everybody in trouble.
Right.
Yeah, if he was playing for Texas Tech and waved him, he might not have gotten in trouble.
Damn.
Right about that, though.
He was the mascot.
Go Red Raiders.
Yeah, and the next subject, we're going to talk about the 5 worst NBA franchises of all time. And we're going to start with you, Wild Dog. And there's a bunch of them we could talk about, man. And we already mentioned one. and nobody really want to go to purgatory, so we're not going to mention it. But I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to kind of express your feelings on the 5 worst franchises in NBA history. And Wild Dog, we'll start with you.
I'm just trying to track who moved and what moved. I couldn't do all that, but my first thought right off the gate is the Bobcats. So the expansion team that shoulda, woulda, coulda, not have been, and then let me just go straight for the jugular with the Orlando Magic. You know, they did very well getting the franchise together in Orlando.
But they had a great season when they had Penny Hardaway and Shaq.
And moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
But again, who let Shaq go, right? And then you do a survey amongst the fans asking Penny or Shaq. You don't give any other options, and the fans vote Penny to stay. Give Penny his contract. So something's wrong with the fans too. So not just the organization, but it's something in the water. I don't know if it's something in the carbonated, carbonation at the stadium that they were drinking, but Orlando, the organization all the way down into the streets with the fans too.
Oh man.
And then now let me get myself in trouble, but I grew up a 76ers fan, and it hits home really hard. The 76ers really, we got our issues, man. We got our issues. And I don't know, I don't think it's a curse or anything, but I don't know. I've been watching so long, I can't even figure it out. And then we've had some changes. We made some moves, some good moves, and things are looking better. But for whatever reason, we still just can't get it right. Look at Iguodala. He goes to Golden State like, oh, well, he's not the man to get it done. He goes to Golden State and wins the MVP of the finals. And I was happy for him. At the same time, I was like, what's going on? And then he comes home to Philly, and then it's mixed jeers and cheers. It's like, he got nothing to do with him. You know what I'm saying? Put up the highlights, celebrate the man. We can't even do that right. You know what I'm saying? He's won chips, he's won finals MVP. It's like when a man comes to town, put on the highlight reel, and you know what I mean? So it's levels to this. It's levels to this. And so that's my 76ers. And then, I really don't want to have a whole bunch of ties, but but I'm concerned. They're on my list because I'm really concerned. And if I'm concerned, and if I ask for information and I can't get any information, that's not a good sign. My man Chauncey Billups is out there in Portland.
Oh man, yeah, Portland.
And if I ask about how's my guy doing up there, and I don't get a response, something. It's not.
Do you think he's a good fit as far as coach for the Portland Trailblazers?
I'm concerned about whether he's a good fit up there.
They don't have enough talent for him to coach.
Do I feel he could be an efficient?
What about you? Don't think Anthony Simons is a good guard for them?
On a really good team, he's your third or fourth best player.
Third or fourth, though?
I mean,
yeah.
They have Ayton, but Ayton's overrated, a little bit.
Yeah.
Scoot was supposed to be really good, and he was just a really good athlete who's just not ready to. He doesn't have a game developed yet.
And that was their first pick, right?
Game.
Wasn't he their first pick?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They traded and got DeAndre Ayton, and he doesn't even start anymore. And not Scotty Barnes, but the other guy they drafted real high.
I think it's Scoot Henderson.
Scoot Henderson hadn't done anything. That they got less talent than Charlotte, and they've had picks. So,
and who's your Wilder? Who's your number 5 worst NBA franchise?
Oh, they really number 1. I guess you could say I went. Bobcats not really they falling in whatever all going all there with moving and then that's all a mess, right? And a mess is a common phrase for dysfunction. So and I hit home to me the Sixers, but no. Even Orlando, above Orlando, I start. What's going on?
I'm just glad we beat them yesterday.
The Wizards who are sitting on 3 or 4 buyouts. I mean, the Wizards.
They're horrible.
They could have picked a better name.
Thank you, Dan. Hop in, just the Wizards.
They're a long way away from even being adequate.
And then you go make a move with executives, and we're sitting there talking like, oh, so-and-so's available, and then they go left field like, who is that? You don't even know who that is.
I don't even know.
Right?
I mean, even in sports,
that's how much I cared.
It's a small community, right? And then you're hiring cats like, well, why or who? And you have to who? Oh, okay. Who are they ref from? Like, no. You already got the issues, and it's like there's people out there that are available, and then you're just going left.
And then you change the name.
Someplace that other teams and people who've been around. I've been around 20-something years, and it's like,
thanks. Dan, go ahead and give us your top 5 worst NBA franchises.
So, I'm a little bit. If we're talking all time, in terms of kind of snake bitten, or I think Sacramento would be one. Now they're not horrible right now, but they're not as good as they probably should be. But they're a snake bitten franchise that has gone through long droughts of being garbage, even though they had times where they had really talented players, where
Chris
they had
Webber.
they had Weber and Bibby and that team that
Stojakovic.
should have gone to a championship, and Stojakovic, and then they also had years what they had, unless I'm confusing my brain's confusing things. Seems like Mitch Richmond, Chris Mullen, and guys like that.
No, that's what's.
No, I'm switching. Yeah. I'm switching my
Golden State.
Yeah.
But I
somebody else. I'm trying to think.
I did really love the Kings owners, the brothers. I love those brothers.
Yeah.
The Maloof, right?
So, say what now?
The Maloofs were their brothers, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I just watched a movie or a TV show that had brothers. Oh, you guys watched the last the movie the Gladiator. Gladiator
Yeah,
2.
yeah.
yes.
So I kind of now would imagine those brothers are like the two Caesars brothers in that movie. They're just weird and they can't come up with a decision and they're both supposed to be one person somehow, but it doesn't work,
Dumb and Dumber too.
Right. It's kind of, but yeah, I think Sacramento comes by more recently because of how they've downturned despite what should have been a talented team. The Suns are a team that's never really been able to. They've had many years where they were talented and can't win championships, and now they should have had a run, and they didn't even really
Now,
have a
when they
decent
went to
run.
the championship, was it against the Bulls
Yeah.
was it the Bulls,
Barkley
right?
versus Jordan.
Yeah, when Barkley lost to the Bulls,
Yeah.
And then
or
when they had
lost to Michael
Nash,
Jordan.
and when they had Nash, they had a run at the Western Conference.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, they were up 2-0 in the finals with Booker, Ayton, Mikal Bridges, and them just a few years ago.
That's true. It feels like I can't even barely remember it anymore.
Well,
No,
they ran into the Greek Freak and the Milwaukee Bucks.
right.
Yeah.
Who they were playing at their peak at that time. But if we're talking about franchises like right now, like Washington looks, I can't imagine all these franchises. There's only one player that's really a super impact player, and that'd be Cooper Flagg, and he won't be a star NBA player for a few years, but he is an impact player, and everybody wants him. So a lot of these teams can really, if they get him, they can feel like they have a future.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't get him, I don't know anybody that's going to help. Washington, Charlotte, New Orleans has had talent and never did. They've had young talent that really should have been able. And then, with Zion never playing, and
Those 5 teams.
Utah
Wizards,
didn't have a ton of talent.
Yeah, and then the Wizards, though, I just don't. That's to me, and I was saying, being sent to purgatory. That's one of the teams you would definitely be sent to purgatory if you was one of those free agents. You wouldn't want to go
right now. Oh yeah.
When your heart breaks, it's like, ooh, not there.
They got the number. Wait, they had the number 1 pick last year, right? And it was like the worst year to have number 1 pick because nobody really knew who's better than who. So, and I mean, the guy's not a bad player, but I don't know if he's ever going to be even a good player. I don't know if that's going to ever happen.
And then if you don't have, and if you're just locked in the old school USA ball and you don't pay attention to Europe, you're screwed. You're screwed.
Yeah, and you at times over glorify European players you haven't seen that much of. But now next 2 years from now, that draft will have some talent. That one they'll have 3-4 guys that can really help.
Now, are the Boozer twins still in? They're in college now, right? The Boozer twins, are they still in?
Are they twins?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Cameron's the good one, right? I think he's the one that's the super. He's the superstar, I think. And yes, he'll be in.
It's like Brooke and Robin Lopez. Well, one's real good, and the other one is just his twin brother that made it.
And then Bryce is better than Bryce.
The one that just made it ended up being a long NBA career, right?
Both
like
of them.
the Holiday.
Nothing wrong with being a journeyman.
Yeah, the Holidays are something else, man. They tend to stick around.
So the Boozer, there's a kid, I think his name's Peterson, who's supposed to be a really legit shooting guard, better than any shooting guard we've seen in a long time. And there's a AJ Dibansa or something like that. I don't hear these kids' names enough to remember. He's supposed to be really good, but Boozer's been elite since he was 14. That kid's been dominating AAU. Couple great grades, couple years up, for years now. So it'll be interesting whether or not maybe he'll plateau at a young age and then won't be as great when he hits the NBA.
Yeah,
it feels like that happened with Zion a little bit. With Zion, it was staying out of shape and almost feeling like he plateaued. Got a whole bunch of money, which made him stay even more out of shape because when you have a bunch of money, you can do anything you want, eat a lot, whatever. And you just don't, now you're not playing because everything's sore, because when you land, it's 4,000 pounds of forest landing.
So we need to send Zion to purgatory in Washington, basically.
By the way, Zion's looked decent again for a little bit, but then I'm sure he won't play for another half a season. But I'd love to see that kid turn it around. I feel bad for him to some extent.
Yeah, I would probably, if I was a Maverick, trade him to the Mavs for a couple of our bench players for sure. See if we can swing a deal.
Oh, I'd take him. At least it'd be entertaining to see how it plays out.
No, thanks. Look at Bob. Your top 5 worst NBA franchises of all time.
Well, Dan and I agree on 4 out of the 5, because I had Charlotte as the worst, then New Orleans, then the Wizards. Wizards are schizophrenic. And I had Sacramento. So the only one out of the top 5 that you didn't mention that I have, Chicago. Jerry Krause thought he put the championship, but after they won the 6th ring, Chicago was just, you're at the top or you're at the bottom. When you're stuck in the middle, you're stuck in no man's land.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had some players come through there. They even, I think
Derrick Rose,
Sexton or Markkanen, one of them played there.
Yeah, Markkanen did play there.
They had Jimmy Butler. When Butler, when Wade was there, Chicago's just, for the last recency bias, Chicago has not been. I don't know if Krause is still running, but when we talk about organizations, we don't talk about just the player talent. It goes from all the way from the top, from the owner to the president of basketball operations, to the GM, to the coaching staff, to even ticket sales. Wild Dog and we've been dealing with the Dallas Swings of the WNBA, and I think an elementary school principal could probably run that team better than what they've got. They just, you can get some seniors in high school probably do a better job. But I have 3 honorable mentions that didn't make my top 5.
Before you do your honorable mentions, I think you're going to mention this team. Utah is on your honorable mention.
No, I didn't have Utah, mainly because Utah traded Gobert for 4 picks and Donovan Mitchell for a buttload of picks, and they got salary cap so they can take on and get more picks, and they got Markkanen and Sexton and Jordan Clarkson, so they got some players to work with. But I mean, people dog them, but they're basically Oklahoma City 5 years ago. They've got, their assets are not in players. Their assets are in future draft picks. So I don't put them there. But my honorable mention, the first one, I'm just going to call them, it's the most bipolar organization from owner all the way down to the bottom. And that's the Brooklyn Nets.
Brooklyn.
They go out and give multiple draft picks to put Kevin Garnett and
Kyrie Irving,
no, before that, after they got an over the hill, Celtics make their run, and then 2 years later, the next buy all those players, and then they wholesale dump them. Then they bring in Kevin Durant, free agent, Kyrie, free agent, and their buddy, they traded a buttload of picks to bring in James Harden, and Harden was the only healthy player of the 3. And they
only played together like 40-something minutes the whole season.
Yeah, and unless they traded Ben Simmons, now they got some picks for that. But it's like he was other than Cuban, he's one of the first billionaires. I think it's a Russian guy, if I'm mistaken.
Is he still the owner?
It's like he wants to win a championship, so he sells everything, and then they don't work out the old players, and he's like, okay, let's dumpster fire. Let's just sell. I'm like, are you rebuilding or are you going for it? Are you rebuilding? They're the most bipolar organization. That's why I haven't. And as Wild Dog mentioned Portland, but I'm going to throw this one out there, and I'm going to just first say I'm an MFL first, okay?
I was waiting for this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, do it.
rookies make mistakes, okay? No matter what sport you're in, a rookie usually makes mistakes.
Are you talking about the
But
owner as the
but they
being the
get
rookie?
they usually get somebody with some smarts or knowledge to help them out. I'm like, the Mavs organization went from being one of the best to being one of the worst.
Yep.
And that's not just because of the Luka trade.
Official dysfunction.
They've done other things that have alienated the season ticket base that have been here for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they hadn't traded Luka, they Mark Cuban had a saying when Ross Perot, who still at the time had a percentage, he got sued because he's like, the Mavs are not making any money. And for about a decade there, they weren't making any money. And Mark Cuban said, I don't care. I want butts in the seats instead of green in my pocket. That was what his preference was. I want a full stadium and I want butts in the seats. And they had the longest running sellout crowd in the NBA, not even close anymore. Uh, Probably approaching 2,000 games because a few years ago it was over 1,000.
Yeah.
But you got an ownership like much like Phoenix when Colangelo exited, and what is it, Matt Isabia, however you say his last name. They single-handedly you take. I mean, I feel sorry for the Cowboy fans that put up with Jerry Jones, but at least they know what I mean. But the new ownership has forget the trades and all the we're slowly getting over and grieving that, but what they've done to the fans that have been stuck by the city through thick and thin, through the 3Js, through
Yeah.
almost the worst record in the NBA to
No.
top of the mountain.
We were in purgatory for a long time.
Yeah.
So when you have new organization that basically they're at the goal line and they fumble the ball, and someone picks it up, recovers it, instead of going in the end zone, they fumble it, and the next guy runs it in the end zone the other way. It's the things on the peripheral. I got word from a reliable source. There are marketing people and sponsors for the Mavericks that are pulling out next year.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
so not only are season ticket holders abandoning ships, but the lifeblood of NBA is marketing. And when you start losing advertisement dollars and the secondary Wild Dogs talk about this, jersey sales, food. Uh, there's been several restaurants right near the AAC go in and out of business, but the one that's there right now is called Hero, HERO.
No,
And
talking about,
they said that prior to the trade that there was a waiting list to get into the restaurant. And they said right now they're surviving on just the Stars games. Said on a Mavericks game, they said there's less than a dozen people in there. They don't even have to take reservations. So it's when an organization reaches out and fumbles the ball to where it's like all the way across reaching it, then you got to say, like, yeah, you was in the finals, but sometimes the best thing is to say nothing and they just keep opening their mouth and making it worse.
Say nothing.
And by the way,
say nothing, do nothing.
That's the thing is they were in the finals last year. There was a couple decent little decisions made and bringing Washington in, having some decent little roster things happened, made it to the finals, and to be so clueless as to not understand the impact of a guy like Luka would have on an entire community. You were considered, the Mavericks are considered one of the beacons of the future in the NBA with
Mhm.
Luka, and then to a lesser extent Lively, obviously. But the fact that Luka, they had a generational superstar coming out of a finals at a big market like Dallas that loves its team, and you just fumble the ball that poor. You're a company that's worth say $5 billion, and you cannot
Easy.
even do a
Easy.
little bit of market research to know, should we trade a generational talent? Is that going to be an incredibly negative impact on an entire business model? It's just going to destroy it. And they weren't smart enough to even understand that, because they just have the brother-in-law of one of the rich owners gets to just run the team like the kid in a sandbox.
Married into money. She married into money, who owned and her daughter. So
They
Patrick
think they have talent because they're rich.
Patrick
Yeah.
Damon married. Well, look at it this way: the only way you talk to those people is through their pocketbook.
Right.
And the Mavs may have been worth $5 billion before they bought it,
They're
but
not worth it now.
they're
Mhm.
not even worth. The Rangers are almost worth as much, which came out at $2.5 billion. The
Mm.
last ranking I saw, they thought the Mavs value had dropped to as little as $3 billion. And you think the city's going to give them money to build a new arena after what they did? I'm like,
Ain't
Exactly.
no way.
yeah,
And,
yeah. The voters are going to go. See you later.
everything was so easy. They want their gambling rights and they want all that. Just sit back, keep Luka as your superstar, try to make decent roster decisions that give to where maybe you can get a run year after year, even if you don't win a
And they
championship.
did make decent
But you blew
roster
it all up.
decisions.
They blew it
Yeah.
all up.
But Dan, that's what I've been saying. Is like Mark Cuban and company. He had no cruise control. There was nothing for you to do. You're being brought in because of your specialty: gambling, construction, even specifically arena and venue construction. That's what your focus is. You own the team now. That's your focus, is the future. And Mark was supposed to stay the governor over the operations, but leave it to the goober, his ego. I'm going to take over as governor, and the worst and the worst possible thing happened is success. Because
Yeah, but what's the old saying? Pride comes before a fall.
Oh, pride
Going
becomes
to the
before a fall.
finals created a monster.
Yep.
Bob, do you have any other honorable mentions, or is that your totality of it?
I
No,
left
but
Dallas for you guys, by the way. I
since
wanted
what
to say
we're
it. I didn't.
since what we're talking on kind of dovetails into the next question.
Exactly. So I'm gonna push it over to Dan. What is
Next
next for the Dallas Mavericks franchise? Because I know we just kind of discussed it a little bit, but I don't know if they can get any further into the cellar that they are now. Even though we have Anthony Davis, still hopefully Kyrie comes back. Will he move on to somewhere else? Or what's next for Dallas?
I don't see Kyrie being here that long. I just don't, because I think Kyrie was happy here, and I
Yeah.
don't think he's going to be all that happy now. And when he's not been happy in the past, he's pretty much made it to where teams are like, yeah, we're going to have to move him. Anthony Davis, is he going to stay healthy? It's always been, he's in his 30s. They got Lively. Lively will be, if he gets healthy or stays healthy, will be a talented young player for a long time in the NBA. But man, I don't know. Like, they have a roster full of general replacement level players. I know a few guys are better than that, but generally speaking, it's the type of roster that gets moved around. Different guys come in, different guys leave, and if they somehow can get, in my opinion, but I don't even trust this ownership has a clue what to do. If they can get draft picks for Kyrie, if they can get multiple draft picks and get a haul for a guy that's an older point guard because he's still talented, I think that would be great. And then hope you know how to draft. I don't trust they'll know how to draft. I haven't been part of their draft thing since Luka. And and that was the last time I was happy about Lively. I wasn't involved with it, but I was happy with the pick at least. But yeah, they're they're just gonna have to start over. I mean, I don't know how. I don't trust that they're going to do it correctly. or if there even is a correctly, what correctly is getting as much talent, young talent back as you can for the older talent you have. And I'm not sure they'll do that in the right way. So
do you think them having Nico still there, will he help build this franchise back up? Because a lot of the rumors is that he's trying to get a lot of players that he was I guess he was an agent of back in the day as far as Nike players. Do you think they'll keep Nico, or do you think Nico moves on next year?
well, I don't think well, I don't know why you would keep Nico. It really feels like there was a little bit of dirty stuff involved in terms of Nico allowing this trade to happen with so little draft picks and everything coming back. It felt shady, and in the fact that he's going to be possibly working back with Nike and yeah, that whole thing just doesn't. It feels dirty. I can't say for sure it is, but it. So I don't know. I don't. Like I said, Nico made a few decisions that were decent. When they on the last trade deadline last year, there were a couple. They made a couple decisions I liked. I'm like, oh, hey, they just made the roster a little better. These guys will help. And then, and they made the run. But man, to be basketball guys, him and Jason Kidd, because I do blame Jason Kidd a little bit. I think he acts like he's innocent. They just decided I feel like they were so mad with Luka being their prima donna that they were willing to ignore how rare it is to get generational talent. And if you trade generational talent, you better get massive, massive haul. You better get Herschel Walker type return. If you remember how much, the Cowboys literally built Super Bowls off of Herschel Walker, it's, I wish I could be optimistic. I don't, and a lot of it, I just don't trust this ownership group now, and I don't trust Nico, and I don't know what to do about it because it is what it is, right?
Let me ask you a question on the Jalen Brunson trade. Well, he didn't get traded. They had an opportunity to give him 5 years, $54 million. Was that also a Nico deal?
They should have done that in a millisecond.
Yeah,
at the time, and they didn't do it.
Was that a Nico decision? Was he here at the time?
No, that was before Nico.
No, Donnie Nelson was still in charge.
They were thinking Brunson maybe was close to plateauing, but little did they realize because he was playing with high usage, a guy like Luka, when giving more usage, he could even get better, and they just didn't fully understand that. I don't think.
But if you remember, Dan, he wasn't even getting off the bench when Carlisle was here. Yeah. He didn't even.
Carlisle doesn't like young guys that much
until January. He didn't become a starter until January, and then they go on the Western Conference Finals run. And Jason Kidd said it's my job to get him paid, but up till that January before the run to the Western Conference Finals, Brunson was just another guy. I call him Jag. He was just another guy. And then once he went to starting lineup, he figured out how to play with Luka, and he took off. And him and Dinwiddie, carried him in the Utah game series until Luka could get healthy. And much like Steve Nash, he's a better player with the Knicks than he was with the Mavericks. He's got better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, Dan, if you remember,
he was young
that Phoenix playoff when Jalen was there and Luka was out, he carried the Mavericks to that win as well. If y'all remember, that kind of gave you an idea that the kid can play.
He gave you some insight, right?
Yeah. So it made no sense for them.
The other thing that teams do is they will let go of young, higher usage players too early, or they will not. They forget how much of an up curve you can really get on some of these guys. SGA a couple years ago, nobody really thought he was going to be mega superstar. He is now. Now, sometimes John Moran had other setbacks, but usually these high usage guys, if they have the focus and the will, can get to that real elite level more than say bigs can or guys that don't have as much control with the ball in their hand. And Brunson was given the perfect opportunity. They just say, here's the ball. We're going to let you be James Harden. We're going to let you be Luka. We're going to let you be LeBron. Whichever guy you want to, you're going to have the ball in your hand. And we trust that you're going to make good decisions and you're going to be able to score in various ways because he can. He's a crafty player. And when I found out how much they could have possibly kept him for, I was not happy about it. But
That was crazy. That was
and
crazy.
and then I was like, man, he better not become better. And then he got better.
Better.
So then they made him
Well,
look,
the day of reckoning is coming because he is now eligible for a max contract.
yeah. Which
And
now,
they just paid a couple players max contracts. So we'll see how much the New York Knicks believe in Brunson.
And by the way, the whole max contract with Luka, let me say that real quick. Part of the reason they supposedly trade him is they don't want to pay him the max. The guy's value in marketing and merchandise and everything is so much more than what they were going to have to pay him in a max contract. And it's not like we don't have salary caps anyway. So it's not like, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know how some of these people don't go bankrupt 15 times when they get rich because of some of the decisions you see them make later. And maybe it's because it becomes so rich, you can make a lot of mistakes at that point. It doesn't matter. But
Wilder, your thoughts on what's next for my favorite franchise of all time, Dallas Mavericks?
Oh,
thoughts and prayers.
Without getting myself into trouble, look, in my 20-something years in and around the NBA, Commissioner Stern, Commissioner Silver, Mark Cuban, this is a principle. It's all about the players. Then the teams and the organization and the league is all built around talent. Commissioner Stern was big about global talent, right? Being ambassadors like Mutombo, spreading the game throughout continents, making it global. And then literally you're getting the best possible athletes and basketball players from all over the world to come here to play, to be on display for us to cultivate and enjoy because it's sports entertainment. When you start introducing this characteristics of dysfunction, then it stops being about what? The fundamental thing, the players, right? You start making it about other things and losing the fundamentals of the league, of the organization, of the sport. So the future is what? I'm gonna go straight to what they said. Nico said that, oh, this is a short-term move because, well, I'm probably not going to be here. He looked at Jason.
Is that what Nico said?
Yes. He looked at Jason Kidd's. It's like, we're probably not going to be here in 10 years.
Oh, he did 10 years. Yeah.
Or whatever. Like short-term, we're making a short-term move for the next few years. That's 3 years. So, and when is his contract up? And then that's negligible. So, so somebody's been quiet, maybe for good reason. Maybe the future is Michael Finley as the new GM. He's currently the assistant, right? And as far as Jason Kidd, I cannot make a comment on that as far as the future looks like there.
Now, to your point, Dan, you said that Kidd may have some responsibility to this whole situation. Wilder, you have any insight on that, or what are your thoughts?
I cannot.
Okay, so Kidd has been a little shady in the past when it comes to making the new. He did it to get out of, I want to say, New Jersey to get to Milwaukee, where he did some things that were like to get himself like out. So he could go and I can't even remember specifically. And I was like, man, that's some shady stuff. When I heard some of the details, I do feel that he's a guy that has a little bit of an ego. I do think I've never felt 100% comfortable with him and Luka together, like whether or not they really liked each other that much. And for him to just sit back and act like he had no idea, Nico Harrison, over the course of a period of time, talking to what's his face 5 times about trading, the GM of the Lakers, about trading your star player, and never did Nico and Jason Kidd ever in any way discuss anything about it. It just, all of it feels like Nico's falling on the sword, partly because he knows he's going to be going and doing something else in a year or two at a different company that happened to be highly benefited by having one of their very star people end up in La La Land and be able to have an entire new marketing thing done within a week. Just this fabulous new marketing thing done. And I'm like, that's interesting. They got that done so fast.
Yeah.
I just, and by the way, Kidd, I was not happy when he got hired. It was partly because of, I'm a little bit of a, if I had multiple DWIs and other stuff in the past, I might not get hired as a coach. But I don't think he's been that bad of a coach. I think he's generally been a pretty good on the court coach and generally has run his roster decently. So I've not had an issue with that. It's just, I never fully trusted him. I'm not sure I ever fully trusted him ever since the whole Mashburn, Jim Jackson and him had all that weird stuff going on, and I can't even remember, but it felt like Jason Kidd might have been the one that was the most maybe in the wrong, but I don't even remember exactly how it played out with, I don't know, some pop star and other stuff. And
Tony Braxton.
Yeah. And, there's been stories of people having to carry him home and things like that because he was too drunk. And it's just like, gosh, dude. So I just, he just started, don't trust somebody. And so I just didn't trust him. And then when this happened, I was like, I don't believe he's completely innocent. I believe I think he kind of acted with Nico like, he thinks he's such a hot shot. We don't need him. I don't know. I can't prove that at all. Nobody can. So, but I can't imagine if I were the coach and I wanted Luka and that happened and I didn't tell me, I would have been, you know what? Last thing I would have done was trade Luka Doncic. I want you all to know that. I never wanted it to happen. If they fire me right now, I'm fine with it because I can't believe how much BS this is. I would have just been overt about it. And he didn't do any of that. He just kind of,
Well, you got to remember, too, Donnie Nelson left inexplicably. And Rick Carlisle, a day later, says adios. And Rick Carlisle basically was able to raise his daughter through all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade because of Dirk. Carlisle didn't really want to so there's something underlying there. And I think basically what's not been said is Luka probably looked at it was put in the Dallas Morning News paper that, Nico had to work his butt off to get to where he was and he still was a bench player. Yeah, Kid has he has chips and all, but Luka probably disrespected them both like the referees. So he's kind of like, I'm the stud, I run the show. You're not going to tell me what to do. That probably, Rick Carlisle don't put up with that kind of stuff. So it happens once, that's suspicion. Happens twice, it's a pattern.
Yeah,
but here I have what I see immediately is they're going to mess up and wind up being in the play-in. They'll lose the very first game, so they won't get past. Like they were up to 9, but they'll get in the play-in, play one game, and then be sent home, which will qualify them for the lottery. But they'll have the worst odds in all the lottery because they'll have the best record of all the teams that enter the lottery. From what I see, they need a bona fide point guard. And I'm not, because Kyrie just had surgery. It's 3 weeks after the injury. He just had surgery. It's 8 to 12 months recovery. And I don't have an ACL, and the doctor goes, to be fully recovered is a year. So you're talking, he's not going to, if it's 8 months, the earliest he's going to play is like January or All-Star. It's not going to be until March next year that Kyrie could even play. And that's assuming he doesn't opt out. So they need a bona fide point guard.
So if he opts out, where would he go is the question. Why would he opt out?
He didn't go join LeBron. He goes to join LeBron.
You think so? I think he probably go back to Cleveland to finish his career.
He had talked about wanting to go to LA before the Mavs traded for him.
Yeah.
If they get, of course, with the way the injuries and all, they had the worst lot. They probably had the lowest pick. But if somehow that big black cloud that's hanging over Dallas turns away and the ping pong balls fall and they get the first pick in the draft, then I trade the rights to Cooper Flag. He's 6'9", by the way. He's not 7 foot, even though he's playing center in another Duke. But I trade him for a buttload of picks and a point guard. I try to do what Oklahoma
They don't have any picks until 2030, right?
Yeah, I don't. Does Dallas have a pick?
They have.
I don't even know.
They have this. They can't. You can't trade back to. It's called the Chris Webber rule for a reason. You can't trade back-to-back year first-round picks. You can trade first-round picks that you've acquired that aren't your own. So they own this year, and I think 20. They got the Lakers in 2031, and then they got they traded their 2027 pick.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, Big Mike, leading to what Boogie's direction he's going in, right? Is that the trend of flow that they're setting? Like Dan said, he doesn't believe Kyrie is going to stay. Their bet right now for the immediate future is that they're building the team around Kyrie. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous proposition. Just ask Cleveland or Boston or Brooklyn. That's building a house on sand instead of on rock.
But
if they get lucky enough to have that pick, then I would try to do like Oklahoma City did. Get an up and coming guard that's not really known, like SGA was. Or even Steve Nash was an up and coming point guard but wasn't starting. Get one of those and flip that first pick if you get it for multiple first round picks, so at least you have some assets.
Would you consider Alonzo Ball being a point guard for Dallas?
Yeah, I think not Lonzo, but LaMelo. You could bring
LaMelo. They're not going to give up that kid.
Well, you don't know. It's Charlotte. So if that black cloud lifts and they get the first pick, I guarantee you the right to pick draft Cooper Flag would get them multiple first round picks. And you could get, Spencer Dinwiddie's doing okay, but he's an off guard. He's not a point guard. Jaden Hardy, he's small. He's not a point guard. Brandon
and you
Williams
also mentioned that a couple podcasts back that if they would have started Jaden Hardy in point guard in the G League, he probably would have been a decent point guard.
Which Wild Dog will verify. I said that when we went to a G League game. They get him practice at point guard. And Brandon Williams looked sharp, but here's the way it works with a two-way contract. Any other team can sign him to a full roster spot, like if they had an open roster spot.
So you think they'll lose Brandon Williams?
The guy you asked me about, and I said he's okay, he's serviceable, and he's already hit his max. Last night was his last game that he can play. But my point being, he's on a two-way contract. If the rest of the league didn't consider giving him a full guaranteed contract, and I'll tell you something about his talent. He's speedy, he's young, but he's undersized. So my whole point is you can't bank on, even if Kyrie doesn't opt out, he's not going to play until January to earliest, more likely March or April. So what are you going to, you're 60 games into next season before you have Kyrie and AD. So you have no choice now. You've got to go get a point guard. Otherwise, you're going to be in a dumpster fire in a 500 team that they're struggling to be now. So,
hey, Big Mike, if I can present a point that I was going to make earlier, and it's leading to what Boogie Bob is saying, and he's dancing around. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. That's what I have here. Okay, they're showing you already what the future is, right? anybody that's anywhere near a fair market value of their play, they're not keeping them. They're shipping out and moving on. And we had to bring all these G League players in, and that's exactly what we've had and have is a G League team.
Well, you had Quentin Grimes was out playing his contract, and they traded Quentin Grimes away because he's going to be a restricted free agent this summer. He was young, and he was a serviceable point guard, even though he's more of a shooting off guard like Spencer did. But he was young. Everybody's saying, well, he wouldn't get the minutes because Max Christie. Like I remember the Mavericks drafted Dale Ellis when they had Rolando Blackman, and Dale Ellis couldn't get off the bench. And it was competition that made Blackman better. They traded Dale Ellis away and got penny. They got nothing really. This pennies on the dollar for Dale Ellis. He goes to Seattle and starts averaging 20 plus points a game. So you know, in baseball they say you can never have too much pitching, as Chris Young said. They're two hardest positions in basketball to fill: point guard and center. If you don't have a point guard, it doesn't matter. You have the best front court in the NBA, but if you can't get the ball to them, it don't matter. So without a point guard, they don't stand a chance.
And like the last game my son and I went to, 20 turnovers. That's what you get. Real talk, 20 turnovers.
Yeah, that's
somebody managed to win, but that's what you get when you don't have somebody efficient and bringing the ball up the court. Point guard or not, point whatever.
That being said, though, the Chicago Bulls won multiple championships in which their center and point guard were probably their two weakest positions. But that's okay. They still had Pippen, Jordan,
DJ Kerr. Wait a minute, DJ Kerr,
Dennis Rodman.
They weren't the level of the other.
They may not have had the best point guard, but they had the best. They had the best player on the planet.
No, I know. The first thing I think of when you need a point guard in the center is
when you got Pippen, when you got Pippen over
all those years.
When you got Pippen over there, though, dog. When you got the worm, that can cover anybody.
Oh no, I know. I'm just
So you got the worm down there. You got Pippen down there. It gets ugly.
If I were the Mavericks and I got Cooper Flag pick, I wouldn't trade unless somebody offered me literally like 4 first round unprotected picks. You know, if they offer a big haul with unprotected. They have to be unprotected because I want one of the top 3 picks the next year, if I can get and other stuff.
And to that point, Dan, there are 3 teams that are holding the bag that basically own the first round for the next 5 years.
All I can say is, Mike, I'm glad I love Texas Legends games, and the Legends have proven to be in a sufficient pipeline. They have.
Yeah.
I've watched players at the Legends games, and they're saying, oh yes, they moved up. This is what we're looking at. Short term, AD's not going to be there. Short term, Kyrie's not going to be there. If they don't get it done, they're gone. 2 or 3 years, they're gone. That's it. Kyrie might be gone sooner. That's it. Then what are we looking at? And then if they're not making the revenue,
what are we going to be looking at?
And if these new owners, these newbies, this goober is not getting the revenue, he's like, I'm not paying players. So then where is he going to get his players from? I'm being realistic now. And if free agents are not going to come here, we had a hard time as it was. Free agents aren't coming.
Oh, no, they're done.
What you got? You're going to have
the only way a free agent will come here if they're going to team up with a former teammate that they played with before. Kind of like everybody's predicting KD might get here, but I don't see that happening.
No.
So that's why Boogie's digging in on the draft, and I'm telling you, the pipeline coming through the Legends, through the G League. That's what we're looking at.
So Dan, you were saying if they could get a buttload of unprotected pick. So there's 3 teams that basically you're going to have to go through. San Antonio has multiple first round picks. Utah has multiple first round picks. The Brooklyn Nets have multiple first round picks. Oklahoma City has multiple first round picks. So for the next 4 or 5 years, those teams are either going to buy a player or take on salary, get more picks, or they're going to combine some of those picks for 1 pick. And so if Oklahoma City, who's got like 20 picks over the next 4 years, if they decide they want to add Cooper Flag next to Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams, they're like, you want 4 picks? Hey, we got 20 here. Let me just throw those 4 picks at you right now.
Yeah. Well, that'd be, you might be able to get more than 4. Yeah, no. And by the way, Cooper Flag playing with those guys, he's like literally the exact perfect guy for their system.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and if I'm Sam Presti and the Mavericks get the first pick and Cooper Flag comes out, Sam Presti, I have Nico on speed dial, be going, how many draft picks do you want?
And the Mavs hope to get a high pick the next year when the draft has two or three ultra talented guys again.
And look, Dan, the Mavericks are already faltering because basically, like Mark Cuban said, and you said a little bit ago, right? With Luka, Mark Cuban said he would at least got four draft picks.
Absolutely.
Now, if you had four draft picks from Luka, then that's a basis for you to do a true real rebuild. But we're starting already like behind the 8 ball. We put ourselves behind the 8 ball by messing up this suspect, like you said, suspect trade with Luka. If we at least got 4, high draft, first round, second round, having whatever common you want, draft picks to do a real rebuild, the old veterans around building the young players, because we're not going to get free agents.
The moment Nico said, I don't really care about the draft picks because we're building for now, or whatever the heck he said, they should just fired him. Right that moment. Just, you're fired. Because it's the dumbest thing I think I'd ever heard a GM say. Like, you could have gotten all kinds of hauls from all kinds of teams, including the Lakers. But I think what it was, well, we need the Lakers to have a future with Luka and with LeBron, who's very, very old, and we don't want them to have to give up all their picks. So they didn't give up all their picks. And it was just, I can't.
Yeah, the league, but.
And we
got some player legacies we probably need to get to because I know we're running short on time.
And then
we're over probably.
We got 16 minutes left.
And then we had to give a first round draft pick to Utah.
Yes, yeah.
And speaking of Utah, thanks for the segue.
It was a second round pick, right? Was it a second round?
Yeah.
First round?
So let's talk about the legacies that Utah had back in the days. And the particular 3 I like, and I just put them on the list, is Malone, Stockton, and AK-47. Everybody knows who Andre Korolenko is. So, Dan, your thoughts on those 3 players? And I know you had an opportunity to watch throughout the years, being that you were a stats nerd. What are your thoughts on Utah back then? Well, not just back then, but with those specific players.
I mean, Stockton and Malone were 2 of the top 4 or 5 greatest players of all time, never to win a championship, and they played together the whole time, pretty much. I'm not a big fan of Malone as a person, but he was all NBA first team like 11 times, and Stockton would have been all NBA first team 11 times if guys like guys like Magic Johnson didn't exist. But yeah, but Andre Korolenko, he didn't last a long time, but man, when he appeared, he was special because we had never really seen a guy that could play perimeter defense and play interior defense. He could do all the defense, just block shots, steals like crazy. Didn't have much of an offensive game, but he was crafty enough. He got fouled all the time and could get to the free throw line, and he was so long and had such bad haircuts and he had like, I believe wasn't he the one who had a wife that like allowed him to cheat on her on road trips a couple times a year? Like they had literal contracts, the weirdest stuff. But no, he was great. I mean, those are the big 3, right? And then if you're going to go deeper with the Jazz, you'd have the Gobert. Rudy Gobert was elite, defensive player, and you want to go way back. They drafted him, or they had
player of the year. Were you surprised of that when he won it?
Won all those. He won defensive player of the year like 6 times, I think. Or no, he was first team all defense 6 times. No, I wasn't surprised. Yeah, he made obvious impact. The way their defense ran was to try to run, kind of pretty much say, hey, if you want to take this specific lane towards our really good shot blocker, we'll let you do it. And teams started not doing that because he was good at impacting shots and not fouling, which is the biggest thing. It's the hardest thing to do as a rim protector. Yeah. And he got really good at it. And teams adjusted their offense to where they didn't, because it wasn't efficient to go after a guy like him, But
he was,
no, it's yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I hear somebody?
sorry, I was trying to ad lib that he was, time, all NBA defense. So.
Oh yeah. No, he deserved all NBA defense. He deserved all those first teams. Now, whether or not he deserved, the best defensive player in the league, he probably was at least a few years.
In a small market like Utah, I mean,
right. But their defense was designed to use him at his fullest impact, and it was almost in a weird way very different players, because kind of back when Utah with Malone and Stockton, they had Mark Eaton. They literally did the same type of stuff where they would kind of allow teams, if you want to drive towards our 7'6", 280-pound guy that'll block all the shots, go ahead, and then they, and it generally worked. So
kind of reminds me of Rick Ostertag too. They had him.
Yeah. Ostertag did. He was Mark Eaton light, or Mark Eaton light. But they used him in the same type of role as they used Eaton, before. Now he wasn't as good as Eaton, but he wasn't bad. He's a good defensive player. No, it's but yeah, I think Pistol Pete, he was an All NBA first team a couple years. I don't know how much they were deserved or how much they were kind of based off the fact he was such a superstar out of college that everyone wanted him to be that superstar in the NBA, and he never had the health to be able to really get there. But Adrian Dantley, I think, is the other big name. I think, Deron Williams. I mean, names are popping in my head now. But right, Adrian Dantley, the greatest low post scorer that was not tall, in league history, and the most efficient low post scorer in league history, that just, like 6'6", but you couldn't seem to stop him. And if you did stop him, they call it, you'd foul him and he'd be at the line anyway. So no, it's, no, they have a history that they can smile about. Too bad their current situation isn't that much.
Yeah.
They better make some good draft picks.
And if I could chime in again on Karolinko,
we're gonna swing it over to you anyway. What are your thoughts on the legacy of the Utah Jazz players as far as Malone, Stockton, and AK-47?
I just want to pick up again on AK-47. Karolinko is because again, when I lived in Germany for 3 years, that made me worse trying to get information on European players. So Karolinko, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's like sometimes it's about when you get to the league, what's your role going to be? What does the team, the coach need or want from you? So I want to take this time to, when I think of Karolinko, I think of really versatility, right? Then whatever he was asked to do, he was able to do it and do it proficiently, right? And when you got Malone and Stockton, and that duo putting up those many points, well, where's your niche? Where do we need you to fill in? And then with the blue collar, tough as nails mentality of Stockton and Malone, well, that's the edge you have to sharpen. You have to sharpen up. Okay. And I want to remind everybody that you remember AK-47 because he's Russian, right? And he played in the Russian Super League, and he was the MVP for the Russian Super League before coming over. So this is someone that could do everything. He could score. He could put, finish at the hole, mid-range, shoot the three. Whatever you saw in the NBA, I'm just trying to assure you that he was Mr. Versatility coming out of Russia. So coming here, whatever they needed him to do, that's why he excelled it, because he was that kind of baller. Okay.
Now his defense, like you mentioned earlier, Dan, was like one of the most notable things that he could do was play defense. He was really good at it.
He could play everywhere on defense.
Yes.
And you don't see star players come over from college or especially from overseas, and can play 5 positions of defense in which they're probably the best defensive player at all 5 positions, and be that long and have that good of instinct, and have offensive players not want to even, they're not going to post him up, or they're not going to drive on him because they know he's going to strip them, or he's going to block their shot, make them look dumb, and they're just going to move the ball around to try to let somebody else, No, he was He was a stud. He just didn't. He was a flash. He only had a couple of years where he got to play really full, and then he started having injuries. And I mean, we have these guys that wish they had modern technology, with all the knee surgeries and stuff. But he would have been one that would have been fun to see play longer.
Yeah, and
Big Mike.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, like, my favorite guy I wish would have played longer was Amari Stoudemire.
Ah, yes, of course. I love.
Roy got some good time in though. He wasn't too small. Brandon Roy, he was a little too. His time
those knee injuries, man.
Or what I would have loved to have seen before the Sabonis dad, the dad, but have him come over when he was 21 years old and play. Oh man, because supposedly he was, because when he couldn't move, he was incredible. Like the way he could pass, but he could barely run up and down the court, and he still was incredible. And he would block shots and hit every open guy and finish without any problem because he was so strong. It was just, I can't imagine what he would have been like as an athlete.
And Sabonis' bloodline is full of ballers. It's full of ballers. Like they're still trying to track down like family members. Like even now, it's like okay, take the soccer ball away and put a basketball in their hand. That's what they're doing, literally. And then of course we're on YouTube, so I would encourage fans to with the podcast and interviews, the very frank and transparent interviews that are coming out now, to go on YouTube, do a search on John Stockton, and listen to comments by Gary Payton, the Glove, and Vernon Maxwell. And you will get very frank, detailed feedback on John Stockton.
He was probably the most hated point guard in the league.
Yeah, he looked like the next door neighbor, but
I heard that about him. That they say he was a dirty player.
Yes, and they not holding back now. They're being very frank about what's said and what was done, and they hated him, but they respected him. John Stockton was no joke. He no man. He had the mailman, and John Stockton looked like the milkman, but no doubt. He's breaking glass and has shards of glass, like shanking folks.
Yeah. And then the mailman's over there leading with his elbow every time he drives.
He knocked the teeth out of Dirk's mouth. Do you remember that? He knocked the teeth out of Dirk's mouth?
He knocked the teeth out of Isaiah's
mouth. No, that was San Antonio.
I thought that was
in the playoff game 2003.
Yeah, I thought that was in Utah.
I don't remember who it was.
But Van Exel
will do.
But Van Exel and Dirk in those battles with Utah, especially that first round short series, they said if it was 7 games, they wouldn't have made it. It was that rough, going against the Jazz, even at the tail end of their careers or whatever. They was like, if it had been more than 5, if it had been 6 games, they wouldn't have made it because it was just brutal, so.
Boogie Bob, your thoughts on those fabulous players, Malone, Stockton, and Andre Korolenko. Give us your thoughts on their legacy with the Utah Jazz.
Well, I kind of figured everybody would pick Stockton or Malone. And so I wrote this. This was the first thing I wrote down. Is like, there's been enough accolades for Stockton, who's still number 1 in assists all time. And there's been enough accolades for Malone, who's still number 3 in the most points scored.
Yeah.
And then I put on bold on my notes, no rings. but they've had a lot of flowers. And let me speak that Karl Malone's number 3, Kobe's 2, and LeBron's 3. All so he was up there with Kareem's numbers and Kobe's numbers for the longest time. Number 2, and he finished his career as Laker. Injury. Kevin Durant just passed 30,000 points. He's 1,000 points for passing Dirk as number 6. And Kevin Durant is going to play at least 2 or 3 more years. I think he's like 34, 35, 36, somewhere in there. But
And you know what's crazy though, that players nowadays, and we talked about this earlier, that they have so many health benefits now as far as nutrition and medicines. It's making these players play a lot longer. I mean,
yeah,
Kevin Durant is evidence of
a
it.
lot better, a lot longer. Not just longer, but a lot better, longer. Yeah.
so Dirk's on that list. So of that, the forgotten man with the Stockton and Malone was Jeff Hornacek.
Yeah.
Because Jeff Hornacek was that third wheel that if you left him open, and they didn't take a lot of threes back then, but he was kind of a modern day Klay Thompson. But Jeff Hornacek and Paul Pressey, even before then, I think was in that role. But when they added Hornacek, that's when they started winning 60 games a year. They went to the finals twice, but they ran into somebody named Jordan. So, but let me talk about Andre Karolinko, AK-47. His career stats: 11.8 points a game, 5.5 rebounds a game, 2.7 assists a game. He played 13 seasons. 6 times he was in the voting for Defensive Player of the Year.
Sheesh.
Rookie of the Year, he finished 3rd.
Nice.
2 times he was in the voting for Most Improved Player. He only made the All-Star team 1 time. And you're talking
That's
about a
crazy.
guy that Scottie Pippen got all the love, but Karolinko was every bit the player that Pippen was defensively.
True.
He deserves his flowers, man. He deserves his flowers.
So he was first in blocks per game in the 2002-2003 season, 3.3 blocks per game.
Nice.
And we're talking during the Dikembe Mutombo era.
No.
And he was really a small forward.
And this is the small forward. Exactly. 3 point. Think about that for a minute. He averaged 3.3 blocks a game for a whole season.
He is on my
He
fantasy team.
He was first.
I can
He was
imagine.
first in total blocks in 2005, 2006. He had 200 blocks in 69 games.
Dang, in 69
200
games?
blocks.
Get that out of here.
Right.
Or as we say on the playground, get that weak blank blank out of here.
Ish out of here. Get that ish out of here.
Okay. Career blocks. He had 1,461 career blocks in 13 seasons. His career earnings was $107 million. Now here's the stat out of all those that really, when I looked it up, he's only 44 years old.
Currently?
Currently.
Wow.
LeBron is 40. LeBron is 40.
Yeah.
Karolinko is 44, and yet we think it's been like 2 decades since he played.
Right.
That's crazy. I didn't know he was that young.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So let me give you one other comparison. We talk about Dennis Rodman and his defense, and Karolinko wasn't the rebounder that Rodman was. But Rodman, who was considered a pretty good defensive player of the year, was also always in the running for defensive player of the year, who only averaged 7 points a game, 13 rebounds a game, and 1.8 assists a game. But Dennis Rodman's career high average was 0.9 blocks a season. You compare that 0.9 to 3.3. His season high was 76 blocks for Dennis Rodman compared to 200. Dennis Rodman's career, he had 531 compared to 1,400. So when we're talking about defensive studs, he's in that Dennis Rodman, who didn't care about scoring, just rebound defense. He's not on the scoring level of Scottie Pippen. But defensively, when you're talking about blocking and assists and what he gave that Utah team, Karolinko could score, but he wasn't the go-to guy to score. He was the complementary, but as Dan said, he could guard 1 through 5. There are players nowadays that can guard 1 through 5, but they don't necessarily the best defender at the 5.
Not proficient, yeah.
But Karolinko, when you think about it, he's 31st all time as far as career blocks, and that's because of a short career. But he's only 44 years old. So in 13, think about this for a minute. 13 seasons and 1,461. That's averaging over 100 blocks a season. He hit 200 blocks in a season twice.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, I mean, that's me giving the flowers to Karolinko because they're just Dirk had to go against him.
If Karolinko, I think the modern equivalent is Draymond Green, except Draymond Green has been able to be healthy, and Green did not get the steals and the blocks that Karolinko did. He's probably he's a little better passer, but not a lot better, maybe a little bit.
I think,
but Karolinko easily could have been a third guy winning many championships if he was with the right type of stars, right?
Yeah.
Now, because he came at the end of Stockton and Malone stardom. They literally were in their late 30s or almost late 30s.
I think when you look at him from the eye test and watching him, he's not the scorer of Kawhi Leonard, but he's defensively he's very much like the Claw. They both play the same position and they play very similar. I didn't look up Kawhi's blocks, but
not nearly as high. They're not nearly as high as that, but they're a little better than Rodman's.
I mean, we're talking at 3. We're talking those are the number of blocks a center gets, not a small forward.
Yeah.
Today's centers don't get that many. I mean,
and
it's rare to see over 3 now.
And then
but in that day they did.
And then
Wembiana, I think, did it this year.
And then in today's landscape, I mean, he may have very well been picked up at 18.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have had to wait, and maybe could have, being developed in the NBA or even the G League, and with the better treatment and health. I mean, with these days and times, I think he would have had a whole different career earlier, better, healthier, and a whole different, scenario.
Yeah, I was looking at it here. He was 20 when he started, and he played 26 minutes a game, 82 games when he was 20 years old for the Jazz.
Yeah. Dang.
So
think about this: if LeBron or Harden or Luka had an Andre Karolinko on their team, do you think they would have to worry about whether any of those played defense?
No.
Yeah.
Yep. Man, so guys, I know we're pressed for time now, but this has actually been a very great show. We actually went over 30 minutes what I predicted we'd go. Dan, it's been fun having you on, man. We have to have you on again. We're about to close out. So, Wild Dog, tell the people where they can find you on these social media streets, man, and let them know all your handles.
Hey, I'm a good dog. I don't be doing too much. So you can find me on YouTube at Wild Dog 357. Again, that's on YouTube at Wild DOG 357, doing sports commentary and always on Swish for real, baby.
Man, facts. Dan, thanks for joining us, man. Tell the people where they can find you on social media, man. Any places you want them to check you out or get in contact with you if they see this podcast?
Well, I'm on X. I'm not as active on X as I used to be, and that's where I used to have a better following years ago. And I always had to use my name, but I believe I'm hoops_nerd on X. But if you type in my name, it'll probably be the first one. Dan Dickey, Dickey. I'm also on Blue Sky. I don't remember exactly what name I'm going under there. I don't have much following there because it wasn't very long ago I switched to that. But yeah, I don't have any YouTube content. I don't have any of that stuff because I'm not as talented as you guys when it comes to
well, you do
figuring
now.
out how to get on social media.
You just fixed that now, so
yeah, they're gonna be looking for you now. Make sure you text me all your links if you have any, and I'll make sure I add them into the video.
Okay.
Boogie Bob, tell the people where they can see you and find you on these social media streets, my guy.
Right there above Dan's head is the logo. Swish for real. And you can always find me at Boogie Bob. I posted today. We didn't actually talk about it. And if you hadn't heard, the Memphis Grizzlies fired Taylor Jenkins today. Home court. He has the most wins in Memphis history. The best record taking him further. Probably a good guy. He's been on several staffs, but he was, get this, there was only 4 other coaches that had a longer tenure with their team than Taylor Jenkins. So we mentioned Memphis in worst organizations, you know, and so there's a change in direction there.
Yeah, they're trying to get over the hump some kind of way.
But I'm guessing one of their stars maybe wasn't
Unhappy.
getting along with them. As for him to get fired during the season before,
Yeah.
you know, because they're going to make the playoffs, right? Yeah.
Yep, that's usually what
they're
happens.
in the fifth spot.
But you know, it's been hot in that kitchen the last few years. It's been
Yeah.
hot over there. It's been hot in that kitchen. So
Yeah,
at that point,
everybody's a little bit nervous.
with that hot point in that career, I'm like, I would also want to leave mutually or on my own terms. Been like, I've had enough. It's hot in that kitchen over there the last few years. So, you know,
I mean, because when
So
coaches get
remember,
fired, it's
so-
not like us. They get fired, they still get whatever contracts left. Not like
Right.
normal
Those
people.
little
You get fired.
snippets.
Good luck in 2 weeks, you know.
You get
Yeah.
the little snippets. Subscribe up there. Swish for real. It's
All right,
linked
Mike.
to Boogie Bob.
Mike, we're
So
trying
you
to
get
go
those
another
little
hour on you.
Right. Guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Dan, again, it's been a pleasure. We're going to get this show cut down. We're out of here. Swish for real, guys. I give you weekends back. Have a great one, guys.
That's it, Pray.